Few of Newport's mansions ever had scandals so big that they escaped their walls and landed in the public spotlight. Hi everyone, Ken here. Today we're heading up to Rhode Island to uncover the elegant and twisted history of Clarendon Court. Hit that subscribe button and let's explore this house. In 1863, Edward Knight Jr. was born into a Philadelphia family of immense wealth and industrial might. His father, Edward Knight Sr., had amassed a fortune as a sugar refiner and later as an investor in railroads, coal, and steamship companies. With this privileged background, Knight Jr. easily stepped into prominence. He succeeded his father in corporate roles, serving as president of several railroad companies, though by most accounts, his true talents lay not in business, but enjoying the fruits of his wealth. In fact, acquaintances famously quipped that Knight had exhibited more talent at spending money than making it. By the turn of the 20th century, Newport was the summer playground for America's richest families. Although the Gilded Age was waning and Newport's heyday as a social capital was beginning to fade, Knight was determined to stake his claim among the elite by building a magnificent summer residence of his own. In 1901, he purchased an acre of prime land on Newport's prestigious Bellevue Avenue. The plot overlooked Narragansett Bay and sat amidst the grand estates of other tycoons. It was on this choice site that he set out to construct a statement home befitting his status. In 1903, he commissioned renowned Philadelphia architect Horace Trumbauer to design a splendid villa where he and his wife could spend their summers entertaining in high style. Knight's timing may have been slightly behind the fashion. Newport's cottages had been at their zenith in the 1890s, but he spared no expense to ensure his house would be among the most impressive on the Atlantic coast. The stately front facade of Clarendon Court was designed in a refined Palladian style, virtually replicating an 18th century English country house that architect Colen Campbell had once imagined but never built. Trumbauer discovered Campbell's old plans for a grand manor called Hedworth House and used them as an inspiration, making only minor tweaks, such as omitting a pair of cupolas, to adapt the design for Newport. The result was a classically balanced limestone villa with elegant Doric columns, coins at the corners, and an unembellished balustrade gracing the roofline. In keeping with the grand, English-Georgian look, the mansion's entrance gates open to a cobblestone court, leading to a dignified facade that speaks of old-world aristocracy transplanted to American shores. At nearly 12,000 square feet, with perfect symmetry and commanding bay views, Clarendon Court was every inch a palace, a brick and sandstone love letter to Georgian architecture and Gilded Age ambition alike. To furnish their new home, Edward and Clara Knight turned to the celebrated Parisian firm Jules Allard Sons, importing authentic period style to Rhode Island. Visitors stepping through the mahogany front doors found themselves in a marble foyer with a graceful sweeping staircase, a dramatic entry that set an elegant tone. Throughout the interiors, 18th century European fireplaces, patterned marble floors, and massive windows surrounded the family and their guests with museum-quality splendor. Each room was themed. For instance, the dining room's architectural features were all a creamy white to match the plasterwork, while all the textiles were colored in hues of greens. Over the years, they added a classical loggia and matching rear wings, expanding the mansion's footprint while preserving its harmonious design. The estate's grounds also grew. Shortly before the house was completed in 1904, Knight snapped up an additional 6 acres of adjoining land to secure direct ocean frontage and space for elaborate gardens. For a time, Edward Knight Jr. enjoyed the idyllic life that Clarendon Court afforded him. Tragically, his wife Clara passed away in 1910, only a few years after the Newport dream home had been completed. With Clara gone, the widowed Knight spent less time at the grand mansion. He eventually moved to a more modest estate called Stonybrook in nearby Middletown, also designed by his friend Trumbauer. Soon after, he remarried to his second wife, Louise, and in the early 1920s, the couple poured a fortune into building a 21,000 square foot Art Nouveau mansion known as Corolla Island, now famous as the Whalehead Club. But what about that old mansion in Newport? Clarendon's court story did not end with the Knights. In fact, the mansion went on to host a succession of new owners, each leaving their mark and sometimes bringing new renown or notoriety to the property. It switched hands multiple times until 1970, when the mansion was bought by Sonny von Bulow, an American heiress to a utilities fortune of about $75 million, and her husband, Klaus von Bulow, a Danish-born socialite. They lived there happily until December 26, 1979, when after a family Christmas gathering at Clarendon Court, Sonny von Bulow was found unresponsive and slipped into a coma. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors determined that her blood sugar had plummeted to dangerously low levels. Sonny was diagnosed with hypoglycemia, likely brought on by a combination of too much insulin, drinks, and medications in her system. At the time, this medical emergency was treated just as that, an alarming health scare, but not a crime. Sonny recovered consciousness after that first coma, and doctors warned her to be careful with her diet and substances. Yet ominously, just 1 year later, almost to the day, a far more dire incident occurred. On the evening of December 21, 1980, while the von Bulow family gathered again for Christmas in Newport, Sonny showed signs of disorientation and was put to bed by a concerned relative. This time, she would never wake up. The 48-year-old heiress had fallen into an irreversible coma, a vegetative state in which she remained for nearly 28 years until her passing in 2008. In 1982, her husband was arrested and put on trial, accused of secretly injecting her with insulin to induce a coma, allegedly so he could eliminate his wife while continuing to enjoy her fortune. KLOTZ was found guilty, but he vehemently maintained his innocence and appealed the verdict. In a highly publicized reversal, his conviction was overturned on appeal in 1985, and at a second trial that year, he was acquitted of all charges. The von Bulow saga did not end there, however. Sonny's children from her first marriage filed a $56 million civil suit against KLOTZ, determined to hold him accountable in some way. Ultimately, in 1987, a settlement was reportedly reached. The disturbing events at Clarendon Court had by then become the subject of endless media coverage, books, and even a Hollywood film, Reversal of Fortune in 1990, in which Jeremy Irons famously portrayed KLOTZ. Newport's elegant mansion was now etched into the public memory as the scene of a dark real-life mystery. Yet through triumph and turmoil alike, Clarendon Court has retained its dignified charm. It remains perched by the Atlantic, still one of the most beautiful of Newport's private cottages, its stone walls and formal gardens silently witnessing the passage of eras. As long as Clarendon Court stands, lovingly maintained by its previous and present owners, the spirit of Newport's Gilded Age and the colorful lives intertwined with this mansion will continue to captivate and inspire all who learn its tale. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. What did you think about Clarendon Court? Let me know down below in the comments section. And while you're there, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an exciting episode of This House.